Welcome to CWS Christian Writing and Speaking. I'm your host, Jackie Wilson, and today's guest is an award-winning author of the book, The Girl in the Garage, 3 Steps to Letting Go of Your Past, a faith-based book for breaking free from a lack of self-confidence, self-worth issues, and a painful past. She is the founder of Confidence Academy, the host of Called to Confidence podcast, and a confidence and self-worth expert. When she's not encouraging others or plotting her next book, you can find her gazing at a California sunset, petting every dog that crosses her path, and eating obscene amounts of popcorn. A few other credentials include certified life coach, critical incident stress debriefer, post-certified chaplain, and she is currently working on a certification as a holistic biblical counselor. Let's welcome to the CWS stage, Miss Sharon Hughes. Welcome, Sharon.
Oh, good morning, Jackie. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I'm excited to hear about your book and just your overall story that led you to become this confidence coach, so to speak. Because as Christians, so many of us suffer with these self-worth issues, and we don't believe
Mhm.
that we are called to be confident. So, Sharon, will you share your story?
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pretty intense one. It's a lot of child abuse.
Mm.
Now, as an adult, I look back and I'm like, holy smokes, I was being groomed. And thankfully, God rescued me more than once from those who had laid a snare for me. But it was just a really long road of healing.
Mm.
And the abuse started when I was a child. And I think I was probably in my mid 40s when I came across a book. Somebody had gifted me a book called You're Already Amazing by Holly Girth. So she's a Christian
Mm.
author and she's also a licensed marriage and family therapist. So this book was basically telling me, you're a child of God and you are loved and you are good enough just where you are. Like you don't need to fix yourself to come to the throne. And I had grown up in church. I thought nobody's ever told me this. My whole life I've been told you're too much, you're extra, settle down,
Mm.
calm down. I grew up in the era where women were told be quiet and be pretty. Just be in the corner, little lady, and be good. And I really had a lot of lies I believed about myself, and especially because of that abuse. So
Mm.
growing up with, like all kinds of abuse, I was I was doing okay until I was 16 and I went to a Halloween party with an older boy. And everybody knows as soon as you say older boy, like, oh, this is probably not going to end well. And it did not. His sister had handed me a red cup, and I took the cup in the bathroom. I was fixing my costume. I took a few sips from the cup, and immediately I felt so tired and like I just needed to lay down on the floor. 7 hours later in a garage at a different location. So I had been put in a car and moved, and my date was assaulting me. So when I got home, finally, around 4 in the morning, I had to knock and wake up my parents to come to the door and let me in. I didn't have a house key. Porch light was off, which you would think that they'd be, up waiting with all the lights on, waiting for your 16-year-old daughter to come home. But that wasn't the case, and when my mother opened the door, she just looked at me. She didn't ask where I was, what happened, if I was okay. I didn't get medical attention, counseling, anything. And that's when everything shifted in my mind. I started to believe I'm worthless. I'm here for the taking. You have to compromise everything about yourself, like just give in order to
Mm.
be loved. So I shoved everything down. There was nobody safe in my world to tell these things to. And I just kept moving forward as best I could.
Mhm.
So, long story short, then, I'm reading this book by Holly, and I'm like, you mean I'm not a crazy hot mess? You mean God isn't mad at me? You mean God actually kind of likes me? It was really a big shift for me. So I reached out to Holly and found her on Facebook, and we started corresponding. She was so kind and so gracious. And at that time, I was getting ready to go through a divorce, after a 20-year marriage. I was closing an international wholesale home decor business that had been pretty darn successful. And I had just started holding events for women, like entrepreneurial events, to encourage them. I told Holly, my heart is to encourage women to pursue their passion and to overcome the things that they think about themselves. And she said, well, why don't you become a marriage and family therapist? And I was like, girlfriend, at that point, I think I was around 40, 45. I said, by the time I finish in school and get all those counseling hours in, I'll be like 100 years old. And she said, okay, well, then why don't you become a life coach? I'll send you to a friend of mine. I went through her program as well. So I did that. And that was the key that started to unlock all the locks, all the chains on my life. So as I was going through that training, my gracious trainer and coach, who was teaching me how to help others, was actually causing me to have all these revelations and all this awareness about, oh, that's what that meant. That's what was happening to
Mm.
me. So I knew that that was my purpose and calling at that point. But I started to proceed with that divorce and I completely fell apart. I hit absolute rock bottom.
Mm.
And one morning I was laying in bed and I was praying and I said, God, I am not going to make it through this. And I heard him so clearly say, what are you believing about yourself? And I thought, are you kidding me? You know everything. You're Lord of Lords. You are God, the creator of the universe. You know everything. I'm a hot, crazy mess. It's nice that I read that book that Holly wrote, but I'm still this hot, crazy mess. And he said, is it true? I was so taken back. And that was just enough to help me make it through like that day and the coming days. I kept asking myself, what am I believing about myself? Is it true? Well, shortly thereafter, I went into corporate training and I was given free creative reign just to create any kind of training that would help the company. Every department told me we need people skills. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go hard on people development and personal development. So I took those two questions into training and the response was shocking. So I call those two questions the God questions because they
Mm.
weren't just for me, they're for all of us. So wherever you are right now, think to yourself, what's the thing that you've been dragging around about yourself? It's the coach that said you're no good, you won't make the cut, and your athletic dreams were crushed. It's the lover that walked out on you, the parent that told you you're no good, the teacher that told you that you're stupid. Everybody has something. So I told the audience in my training room, just hold that thought. I went through my whole training. And at the end, I said, what if that thing that you're dragging around isn't true? Who would you be? And a girl in the front row just blurted out, free. And I was so shocked. I'm like, okay, we're on to something. So I did this again for another group. And it's people of all different ages, all different departments, men, women, different backgrounds. And that time, two people in the training started to cry. One of them had to leave the room. And the other one came up to me after the training and said, I haven't spoken to my parents in 10 years, and I'm going to call them tonight. And I'm like, holy cow. First of all, these are life changing questions. But second of all, I'm like, you can't make people cry in corporate training. Am I going to get fired? So I just knew like there's something crazy about this. And I was like, okay, I think I have a piece of my messaging and I really wanted to be a speaker and an influence and speak life into people. So I attended a speaking conference and it was not about my story at all. It was nothing like that. It was very safe, like how to figure out what your purpose and calling is and how to move forward. It was kind of like strategic for business. And when I got there, I felt like God was saying, you need to tell your story. I'm like, I don't think so. Not here at this stage. Like, Holy Spirit, are you trying to punk me? And I reached out to a couple friends and I said, I think I'm supposed to tell my story. And I can't reach anybody. And I've only got a couple hours to change my talk for that night. So finally, I get a few messages back praying for you. You'll be fine. Just do it. And I'm thinking, you don't even know my story. Like, what are you saying to me? So I did. I did bathroom negotiations with God, pacing back and forth. And figuring out what I'm going to say in a short 3-minute talk. And I gave that talk and I walked off the stage and I said, "The Girl in the Garage. That's the talk. That's the book. That's the message for everybody." And that's how I landed here with you, Jackie.
I love it. And you just mentioned your book. So let's mention the title one more time. It's called The Girl in the Garage, right?
Mm-hmm. It sure is. 3 steps to letting go of your past. Yes, and
Yeah.
it's for anybody that's dragging something around.
Yeah. And what else will they find in your book? Because I know you tell your story, but what types of tips should they look forward to?
So the book is also written like a workbook. There's a lot of biblical reference in there because what's really important about when you're pursuing confidence and a healthy self-worth is you really need to have that clarity on your identity. So, being that I am a woman of faith, I go to the throne. Who does the Lord God Almighty say you and I are? And when we start to look at what he says, that we are called, we are chosen, we are set apart, we are loved, we were created for a purpose, this shifts everything because the world wants to tell you that you're not good enough. The
Hmm.
world wants to tell you, go fix yourself, and then maybe you can come to the throne. But we
Mm.
read in Hebrews, come boldly to the throne
Yeah.
in your time of need. So if you're interested in letting go of the past, you'll see stories in there. There's actually 2 case studies, one a sort of case study ish, not like a formal one, but one was my mother, and then one was my daughter's father.
Mm.
And I show how abandonment and brokenness completely hijacked their life. So I try to write it in a way so that you can read something and go, oh, I see that, how that might have affected me, or maybe a girlfriend
Hmm.
or a loved one is going through that same thing. And then there's steps to break up with the lies that we believe about ourselves.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. And what's next for you, Sharon? I know this is not it.
Well, I'll take that as a prophetic word. Thank you, girlfriend. I just had it really a fresh wind from God to start a kingdom confidence tour. Because I
Wow.
think, like you said, so many people, they're struggling with confidence. And as daughters and sons of the Lord, that should not be the case at all.
Mm.
So we need to get back to our foundation. And I'm like, okay, Lord, let's do a kingdom confidence tour. I don't know how we're going to do that, but let's do it. So if anybody's listening and they want to talk about this, like hit me up. We'll figure it out.
I love it. I love it. How can people connect with you?
Oh, it's really easy. Go to sharonhughes.net/hello, and you will see all the things right there. If you want to message me or if you want to grab a confidence freebie, all the links are just right there. I'd love to hear from your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Sharon, as we wrap up your interview, and it has been wonderful hearing your story and how you are helping to change people's lives. But what is the one thing that you want people to absolutely take away from everything that you said today?
This is perfect. Okay. Beautiful audience of Jackie's. This is my favorite saying. Believing a lie is just as powerful as believing the truth. So you need to be really careful of what you're believing. You need to stop and say, is this true? Because we know we are supposed to take every thought captive. If it doesn't line up with the truth, it's not correct thinking. So get rid
Mm.
of it.
Yeah, I love it. CWS audience, you have heard her. Ask yourself the question, is this true? And it could be the pathway to your confidence journey. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And until next time, beautiful people, God bless.